What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I have today with us Edwin Edebiri. He's the Chief Happiness Officer over at Happy Neighborhood Project. Introduce yourself. How are you doing today, Edwin?
Hey, I am happy. I am just happy to be here. I tell people, I said, when I get up from bed and I cannot answer the question, how are you, with I am happy, I go back to bed,
So you wake up happy.
Exactly. I wake up happy, and it takes some working. I mean, I think most people that are knowing my work now, I have, back in 2009 at the height of the recession, I just went out on the street and I started talking to people about happiness. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. It was just that I wanted to shift people's mind from all the negativity into something positive, and by somebody who do a lot of meditation, sometimes you just find calmness, even where everything is falling apart. You just relax, you calm, And so
Right.
I just went out on the street and started talking to people. And I asked very simple question on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just now, And,
Right.
and they give me a number and we just talk about happiness. And so I started doing that and I end up interviewing over 1,000 people in the process. So you get to meet a lot of people, you get to learn a lot from people. And being that I travel all over the place, it helps to expand our base. So I started to develop a very simple and yet powerful concept, which is to move the narrative from happiness as an emotion to happiness as a skill. And by doing that, I started to learn some skill myself. So one of those skills is just when I wake up, I want to wake up happy, no matter what's going on. Yes.
Wow, that's actually wonderful. And you've talked about a couple of things that we're going to touch on in this podcast. So for example, you said you just went out and started interviewing people about happiness, and you got your PhD in happiness. What is that like? What is happiness as
No,
a
I don't
skill?
have PhD in happiness though, I'm the
Understand?
chief happiness officer.
Understandable. So how would you say that you've studied happiness? How does that look? What were your findings, I guess?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a very, very interesting concept, okay? Because everyone think, uh, how would I put it? If you are happy, you think everybody is supposed to be happy,
Right.
And unfortunately, if you are not happy, then that's a whole different story, And so people kind of like just feel happiness is on you, it's your own thing, And if you are happy, great. If you are not happy, too bad. And I was like, no. We got to take a few steps back, because happiness, we are so interconnected, way more than most people know, because happiness is energy. And I'll give you an example. You can be happy and we're walking past each other in a walkway, and your happiness will affect me. And I would not know why. My energy will change because you are happy. The same, unfortunately, is true. If you are unhappy, your energy can also affect me. So we are more connected. There is a study that was done by Harvard Medical School and the University of California. It was a joint study. And they find out that when an individual becomes happy, that individual trigger a chain reaction that affect 3 levels of friends. So they affect their friends and their friends and their friends, So that means you can be happy off of somebody else that was 2 degrees from you that is happy. That's how powerful happiness is. So that's why, and as I start to do my research, I start to notice where if a person is happy, they come into a room and they change the energy in the room. Now, unfortunately, this is also true. If someone is unhappy and they come into a room, they change the energy in that room. So you have to be kind of careful is which energy are you caught in, and how can
Right.
you quickly help move yourself from the wrong energy into something more positive, and so those are some of the things that were revealed to me, when I was doing my study.
Mm. And so you talked about moving happiness to being a skill, right?
Yes.
How do you work on that skill? Like skills are something that you can improve upon, you can do better at, you can strengthen, you can loosen, it can fluctuate. How does that work for being happiness? How do you, I guess, work on your happiness as a skill?
And I think that is the whole thing I am passionate about, for real. This is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. Okay, so you just mentioned a few things. We go to watch basketball and you see the great basketball player and we just think they're just wow. And you go to watch soccer player like Messi, and they are just like wow. Music, piano player, anything that involves skills. When you look at those people, they have put more time training than most people who are not at their level.
Right.
Sure, there are some people that are gifted, but even gifted still have to improve on that skill to be at the top of the game.
I
And
agree.
so I started to look at, as I was interviewing people, a lot of time when I come across somebody that was just kind of dejected, they just dejected, maybe they are even going through some kind of depression and their mood level is just in the toilet.
Mhm.
Majority of the time is because they think they can do anything about it. Okay. In other words, they've kind of just given up. And so I start to look at it and I'm like, wow, everybody tells us happiness is emotion, okay, which it is. Don't get me wrong, okay? If we leave it as that, then we are powerless. In other words, if something good is happening to us, we are happy. And if something bad is happening to us, we are unhappy. And we're just going with the flow. We go through emotional roller coaster. That's too much wear and tear on us. It's kind of like LeBron James, getting to a game and he say, you know what, I don't feel like playing the game today. Hey, you guys, the rest of you go and play. It doesn't work like that. You
Right.
know, he shows up and he's ready to play, unless if he's really sick and the doctor can give him excuse. Even in that case, some of the players still want to play, they don't want to still sit down. And so if we start to move happiness from emotion to happiness as a skill, then we are empowered. Okay. So happiness is an emotion, we are powerless. Happiness as a skill, we are empowered. Now, that doesn't mean that everything in our life is going great. No.
Right.
It just means that when something is going wrong in our life, we have some clue what we can do. We have some skill. Again, I go back to basketball. I know some people say, "Oh, it's not the same thing." Human being, we are different. We are not mechanical. No, you look at a good basketball player. They are down a few points. They don't say, "Okay, let's throw in the towel. Let's just go home." No, they're still gonna play their best. As a matter of fact, that's when they dig in a little bit deeper. So
Exactly.
the way I look at it is when we look at happiness as a skill, life will still throw curveballs, just like it throw everybody else. But that curveball doesn't knock us off completely because we have some ideas. We know what to do. We have been preparing for it in ahead of time. We are not waiting for things to go wrong before we start learning how to be happy. We are practicing it every day. I tell people, and we are going to get to some skills that we can really learn, but it's good to understand the framework. It's good to understand the background, because once a person gets the concept that, wait a second, happiness is a skill. I need to identify some skills that I can learn, that I can be really good at. And keeping in mind that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes improvement. So that means if I practice this skill, I can really be good at it. And that's why I can honestly look at the mirror without nobody being there, okay? I can look at the mirror and I can say, hey, Edwin, you are a happy guy, you know? And I'm not trying to impress anybody or anything like that, because I've learned a lot of these skills, and we can talk on some of those skills that are really powerful, that allow you, one of the things that I was learning from, I think it was either a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and he said when people are really suffering, going through depression or stuff, the first thing they look at is what are their coping mechanisms,
Right.
And if they don't have coping mechanism, then it's going to hit them more. Well, guess what? If you are able to flip happiness from emotion to happiness as a skill, you have coping mechanism because you have skills that you have developed.
I didn't even, okay. So that makes a lot more sense now when you put it into that particular perspective as like a coping mechanism and different types of things like that. Okay. I like that then. I like that. I really do like that. So I guess, when did you realize that this is what you wanted to do? I don't think people, unless it's something that you knew that you wanted to do as a kid, like me, but very rarely do people, especially within their particular passions in entrepreneurship, usually say that that was something that they wanted to do their entire life. So like, give us some insight as to what younger Edwin was looking for. And is this how did that feed into this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate to say I grew up a happy kid. Okay. And bet that I will become the chief happiness officer. No, I have no clue about that one. Okay. That I would even do a study on happiness. No, I had no clue about that one. But I was the kind of person growing up. I let me put it this way. When I was 7 years old, that was when the civil war broke out in Nigeria. Okay. Civil war broke out. And a lot of parents were nervous for the right reason, for their kids, for safety, protection, and stuff like that. Okay. Now, I never felt that. I was always excited, and this is really weird. Okay. This is really weird. So one day, the Nigerian Air Force flew over our building. They were on their way to bomb a war zone. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm 7 years old, and I ran out of the room because that was the first time I've heard an aircraft fly over the roof, over our area at all. And I was so fascinated by this big machine in the air. So I'm in the middle of the road looking up the sky as this thing is going, and my parents are screaming, come in here, come in here, come in. I'm like, no, I gotta see this thing, I gotta see this thing. And then I went, and of course the plane went by really fast, but it resonated in my subconsciousness. When I finally went back inside the house, I said, man, I wasn't thinking about the plane was bombing people and none of those stuff. I was just fascinated about this thing being able to carry itself in the air and stay up in the air, and so my mother was like, you're going to get killed. What if they drop the bomb on you? I said, no, they didn't drop it on me, and I said, but I want to drive one of those. And I kept telling everybody that I met, I want to drive one of those big things that is in the sky, And then finally, some grown-up folks told me, okay, you don't drive those, you fly those, I said, okay, I want to fly one of those, And of course, I ended up becoming a pilot, But that is
really,
yeah. And so you take an instance that most kids were locked in, they were all scared, they were afraid of dying, and it's war zone, you got to be afraid. You take that instance, became an opportunity for me to decide on something that ended up having a tremendous impact on my life. Got a pilot license, end up going to do my MBA in Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, one of the top, schools in the aeronautical, environment. Off of something that was supposed to be a disaster, something. Can you imagine that day when my parents was like, you got to stay in the house, and like other kids, if I stay in the house, I will never see that thing fly over the air, nor talk about falling in love with flying.
Wow. So, oh my gosh, that's a story. That's a real good story right there. Okay, so you learned how to fly. Where'd you learn how to fly at?
So I learned how to fly in Massachusetts. So, and I flew out of Norwood Municipal Airport. And for those who are familiar with Massachusetts, it's kind of close to Brockton, where Boston and then
Ah,
Brockton.
okay.
And that's where Marvin Hagler, the boxer, Marvin Hagler came from Brockton. So we used to go hang out with him back in the days when I was,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Little
and he used to,
celebrity walk.
yeah, well, I don't know about that, but he used to like it. It's like, hey, you guys, you need to meet my pilot friend. He's gonna be a pilot, and then and so of course we'll come into the practice ring, and they'll be practicing, and it was fun. Yeah, definitely. So
Wow, that's fun. That's fun. So I'm gonna let the audience know we are one of Edwin's sponsors at HNP, and he does such an amazing job over there at Happy Neighborhood Project. I always tell everyone whenever I meet people networking, because I network a lot now and everything, I always tell them, hey, you have to check out every single one of Edwin's like chapters. I like there's so many to go to, and they're all amazing. How did that come about? Like I know it kind of popped up during the pandemic and everything.
yes.
But how did it come and how did you get it to grow so fast? Like that's almost like you almost growth hacked an entire networking like agency kind of thing. Like how did you growth hack this thing?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say that's kind of like the second experience, the second visiting, because back in 2009, like I mentioned earlier on, at the height of the recession, when I went out and started talking to people about happiness, I end up starting the I Am Happy project. Now, and the goal of that was to shift individuals' mind from all the negativity about recession into something positive.
Mhm.
And then what happened is this, and I'm going to share this story because this had a profound impact on my life. Because during the period of doing those interviews back in 2009, I came across a young man. And this young man, this was in Jack London Square in Oakland, California, for those who are familiar with Oakland. Beautiful Sunday. And it was a routine day. I'm talking to people like I've been talking to so many people. And this young man's coming towards me. And I say, hey, excuse me, can I ask you a quick question about happiness? And he said, no. I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? So I said, come on, it's a really quick question. And he said, not really. I'm like, come on. And I've kind of promised myself I would always try 3 times before I give up.
Mhm.
And so the third time, he kind of, slowed down a little bit. And he said, go ahead. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now? And he scored by far the lowest. And so I was like, wait a second, why would somebody rate themselves this low? This is self-assessment. And this is a very beautiful Sunday morning. And so I said, hey, can I share with you a quick story? And he said, no. I'm like, okay, this is not going to be an easy one. I said, come on, what is going on? So he realized I wasn't going to let him go that easy. So eventually he said, okay, whatever, just share your story because I got to go. So the first thing that came to my mind, I started sharing. And at the end of that first story, I noticed he was kind of slowed down a little bit because he was just ready to go, go, go. And he
Mhm.
slowed down. So I said, hey, can I share another story with you? He did not say yes or no. So I assumed it for a yes. So I shared the second story with him, the third story with him, the fourth story. I was on the roll. I think it might be like 9 story or 30 minutes later. And a little voice in my head said, okay, Edwin, you need to slow down, you need to stop. So I reached out to shake his hand. And this young man grabbed my hand so hard, so strong. And I'm like, okay, what have I got myself into now?
Right.
And he said, what is your name? I said, well, as a general rule, I don't give my name. And I make that decision very early on because I didn't want people thinking, okay, this guy is just talking about happiness, but he's coming to try to sell us something. So I don't give my name. And he said, well, not this time. He said, I didn't want to talk to you at first. You've kept me here for almost 30 minutes. the least you can do is give me your name. So I
yeah,
thought
I'd
that was
agree.
fair.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I thought that was fair, and plus I wanted him to release my hand too. So, so I told him my name. He asked for the spelling of my last name. I spelled it for him and he released my hand and I went my way. Again, at that time, for me, it was just another routine interview that took a little bit longer,
Mhm.
And then the next day, I got a call from this young man and he said, "Hey, do you
Wait,
remember
He
me?"
called you the next day
He called
after
me the
only
next
knowing
day.
your name?
Yes.
What year
And,
is
and that was
this?
the part of it that kind of also shocked me because so it goes, "Do you remember me?" I say, "Yes, from the Jack London Square because I remember the voice." And I said, "But what I don't remember is giving you my number, And he said, "I Google you, So
Okay.
so that's when I realized why he asked for the spelling of my last name, because there's no way he would have just found me just by Edwin. And with Edebiri, it's really very easy because I've had the number for a long time. And I said, "Okay, what's up?" And he said, "Well, he's calling to say thank you." I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" I'm the one that held you hostage. So
Right.
why are you calling me to thank me? And that's when he broke the news that when I had stopped him, he was on his way to commit suicide.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that was like, whoa. So that changed everything for me. That's really where I moved from, okay, this was just kind of a fun interviewing people about happiness, to wait a second, this can really impact people's life and people are going through all kind of stuff. So, and the reason I'm sharing the story is as a result of that, I ended up starting the I Am Happy project then. And that grew very fast also to 64 cities in 19 countries. And then that's why my work end up was recognized at the United Nations for what we do for global happiness. So that was my first experience in terms of growing a happy network, a happy organization. Okay.
Mm.
But that has nothing to do with business. It was just working with individual and helping them to participate in their community to
Right.
improve happiness. But when March 20th came, okay, or actually I would say like February of last year, February of 2020,
Mhm.
we were planning to celebrate the International Day of Happiness. It was going to be an event in a theater kind of setting. We have people already registering. We have our guest DJ. We have, and then of course they started canceling things. Okay. At first it was like only 250 or less. Then it became 150 or less. And then it became 10 or less. At that time, we know there's no way we're going to host the events. Okay.
Right.
So I told my team, we are still going to celebrate International Day of Happiness. Even if we cannot be together on March 20th, we still got to celebrate it. That's when we switched to
Show
Zoom.
goes on.
Yeah, it goes on. So we switched to Zoom. But I did not want it to just be a regular one person talking to everybody kind of situation. So we started to study how Zoom can do that. And that's how we came up with the breakout room system, and that we can have people in smaller group and stuff like that. And so because it was celebrating International Day of Happiness, we had about 100 people registered. People had fun. And then it was like, "Hey, you guys gonna do it again?" I'm like, "Wait a second, it's supposed to be once a year." It's supposed to be March 20th every year. But people were not gonna buy that. And so we decided to do it the following week. And then we noticed people come from everywhere. We realized, wait a second, this cannot just be a Northern California stuff anymore, because people were telling people, because remember at that time, it was just when people were still just early grounded at home, stay at
Right.
home, whatever. So, so then we quickly decide, okay, we'll do a Northern California one and we'll do a nationwide one for everybody else. Well, the nationwide one just kept growing. It just kept growing. And then we realized, we got to break this thing, because my whole concept was, if we are the happy neighborhood, just doing one big nationwide doesn't really quite cut it. We have to go to the neighborhood where the people are. So that's
Right.
when we started saying, okay, let's host one for this state, and let's host one for that state and that state. And then from one state, then we decide, it's too much to just have one for Florida. Let's break it up. We had a north and a south. And then it grew very quickly. So, okay, let's have a central, and then we have a West Florida. So now we have 4 events in Florida. So that's how it started to grow. Now we host about 69 events every week.
Wow.
And yeah, from just a little bit over a year. Yeah.
That's some serious growth happening right there. And I would think that it was probably done all, I don't want to say necessarily like old school style, but or because you weren't like cold calling anybody, but you were just like out there, boots on the ground, networking, talking, just in people's face, just like, hey, happiness.
Yeah, and also too, though, definitely the pandemic played a lot in that. I mean, and no question about it. And I know, and unfortunately, there were a lot of people that had the pandemic really bad, and I think one of the things that really helped Happy Neighborhood Project was because of my experience with the I Am Happy Project, which is a separate organization. And I said, my goal is to shift people's mind from all the story about pandemic into something positive. And so when people come to our meeting, that 55 minutes, actually we started it out first as 1 hour. It was just from the beginning of the hour to the end of the hour. And we wanted to make sure that that period was a time where people can actually forget about all their problems, and they can focus on how can they make their business work, how can they survive this pandemic, because we didn't know the whole story. They've never come up with vaccine, anything or of that nature at that time. We didn't know how long it was going to be, but we wanted to create like a safe haven for businesses and professionals. So when they come in that 1 hour, they are going to forget about all the pandemic. We never talk about pandemic. We never talk about anything. We just focus on happiness, And then when we start seeing people zooming a lot, then we decide, okay, wait a second. People were apologizing when it's almost the end of the hour because they got to go to another thing. So we decide, okay, let's just cut 5 minutes off at the end and make it 55 minutes. So people don't have to apologize. They can just have 5 minutes before the next event. So that's why we end up having a 55 minutes event.
Wow, you really got this thing all the way thought out. Like I really do appreciate how you guys have gone into detail with this, especially how all of your members follow suit. How do you do that? All of your members, or not even just members, but all of your hosts follow the exact same rule and are very synchronized. It's like almost like if you were a franchise owner in that aspect. Like what's your secret to keeping everybody like in check?
Well, first of all, we are very happy and fortunate to attract the right kind of people. Okay. When you have the right people doing what they enjoy doing, it's not that much work, and it's not that much difficult. And then the other thing, of course, is very early on as we start to experience the growth. I mean, when you go from one event a week to 5 events a week, you can, and especially if that happened within the first 30 days, and then you start to see yourself at 15 events within like the 90 days, you start to realize, okay, I think we better get this thing down packed. So the first thing was that I was in all the events, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was hosting, and there was Vaughn, there was Aaron. We were all doing all the events. And then it gets to a point you realize, okay, this is not going to work. You cannot continue doing all the events. You're not going to be able to grow. Can you imagine me hosting all 69 events every week? I will not be a chief happiness officer, so that's where we come up with the concept of the co-host. And then when that co-host came, that just changed everything. I mean, it just, there is no way we can do what we are doing right now without the co-host. There's just no way. And so that's been a tremendous. And then the moment we start to introduce the concept of co-host, then we realize we got to document this process. We got to turn this thing into a science, And so we created a co-host guide, so that every co-host know what they're supposed to do. And we even attach a 4-page script so that they don't even have to try to think about it. They just got to be able to go through the script and they will be fine. So that's kind of like what we did. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing then. So you've gone through a whole lot. And so I want to kind of like branch into something a little bit easier. I see you are doing an amazing job at branding. So what's the colors? Where do the colors come from? Does yellow and purple have a significance? Does the house, does the logo have a significance? What's the branding?
Right. So first of all, purple is my favorite color.
Oh, wow. Okay. Fun fact. Purple is his favorite color. The secret, little secret right there.
So purple is my favorite color, and yellow is the color of happiness. Okay. And so I figure, hey, if we can combine a little bit of purple and happiness color, then we got it.
Is yellow really the color of happiness?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you can Google it and do the little research has been done, and it's yellow. So, and I think it has a little bit to do with sunshine. Or if you look at a yellow rose, or if you just, it's just you cannot look at yellow and be moody. It's very hard. It's very hard.
Okay.
Yeah, it is very hard. So yellow, is the color for happiness. And then of course, the whole idea is a house that on the happiness. So we wanted to make sure that everything we do is a foundation of happiness. It's on. And so the house is the neighborhood, and on the foundation of happiness, you can kind of see that. So that's how the concept came about. And that's why I always encourage people, as you grow, whatever you grow, whether it's your career, whether it's your business, you want to do it on a foundation of happiness, because that way you bring happiness along with you. Sometimes people feel like, oh, if I'm successful at this thing, I will be happy. And I'm saying, no, that's backwards. You should be happy already, and then you'll be successful at that thing. And so that's what we want, that the Happy Neighborhood Project be the happiest place in the world for happy businesses, or just for business people. So yeah.
Okay. So then I guess that's a pretty good thing then. Okay. So you've been doing this for a pretty long time, and it seems like there's been a lot of happiness going on. And so you haven't mentioned, I guess, per se, a lot of obstacles. And so some people might think, oh, being happy is the key. So in growing this, in everything that you've done, what are some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome like some of those obstacles? Because I'm sure being happy, and developing that skill, you have tiresome days, you have days that you're like, I don't want to go to the gym and practice this. And so like, what's it like trying to overcome all of that and growing what you've been doing?
Right. So I'll give you two answers to this. So the first is, and this is the behind the scenes stuff. The very first event we did on March 20th, 2020 was a disaster. Okay. We have done everything that we could do, working with Zoom technical people, calling them, describing to them what we're trying to do, how we would like to do it. And later on, we find out that one of the people that was assigned to us was kind of new and did not quite understand either what we were asking or how the team would work, but they gave us advice anyway, and it was a good advice, okay? And so we wanted to do breakout rooms, but this person set us up on a webinar, Zoom webinar, okay? Well, we find out later on the hard way that you can do breakout rooms on Zoom webinar. But we were already live when we find that out. So people already register, people already show up, and I'm looking for the breakout room. Where do I create breakout room? And I think, so the beginning of what everybody is seeing now as, wow, very successful growth, was a disaster. We had to actually send people away. We told everybody, hey, we are trying to figure this out.
What?
We'll get back to you in like 15 minutes, okay? When we figure it out, And then everybody left. And then we finally figured out that we had to set it up in a meeting in order to be able to do breakout room, because I wanted to do breakout room. I didn't just want to do a webinar. I didn't want to just be talking to people and they are not seeing me. Excuse me, they are seeing me, but I am not seeing them, in a webinar. And I can't do breakout room. So we send them out, and it was so funny. After we figured it out and we're trying to email everybody to come back, we click the reminder on the webinar. So it sent them back the same webinar link that everything is good.
Listen, I remember we did an event. It was our BDW event, and that was a disaster. Similar issue where I did not know that, well, when you go through Eventbrite, it does the webinar link version of Zoom for some reason. And what we had practiced was for the actual meeting. Like we can't practice, I guess, in webinar mode or whatever. And so when we switched to webinar mode, when we tried to start bringing like the speakers up, they had to be like a host or something. And it was a whole bunch of stuff. So I definitely have been through that kind of, disaster trying to do that kind of stuff. Now I've had you for a little bit. I don't want to like keep you too long or anything. And so I want to start reining in. You talked about, happiness as a skill and a lot today. And so we also mentioned some of the things that, people can do skill wise to be better at happiness. What are some like mental exercises or coping mechanisms or, ways to improve your happiness as a skill?
So I'm going to share 3 very quickly. Okay. The first one, probably the simplest of all, is gratitude. Okay. And I tell people, write down 1 or 2 or 3 things you are thankful for every day. Get in that habit. Now, there's a study that's actually conducted where if you do that on a daily basis for 6 months, you would have raised your level of happiness by about 10%. Okay. That is huge. That means somebody that's mildly depressed will be totally out of depression. They will be so happy people will not recognize them. Okay. So that's just gratitude every day. Now, some people might say, oh, you don't know what's going on in my life. I don't have anything to be thankful for. Well, guess what? If you can open your mouth to tell me that, then that means you have something to be thankful for, So you, instead of focusing on the big things, maybe you didn't win the lottery, maybe you didn't get that promotion, maybe you didn't buy that house. But the fact that you were able to wake up this morning, that's one thing to be thankful for. The moment you can stand on your feet, the moment you can look, whatever it is, if you focus on the little things, you would have reasons to be thankful. No question about it. And I tell people, if you're going to use digital, to track it, don't copy and paste, don't just write one thing and then just copy and paste it every day. No, the whole exercise is to rewire your brain so that your brain will start thinking about more new stuff that you can be thankful for or grateful for. So that's gratitude. That's very powerful. Anybody can do that. The second thing, the skill, and this is one of my own skill that I've developed. I call it the 24-hour promise. Okay. The 24-hour promise is you wake up in the morning and you promise yourself you're going to be happy for 24 hours. That's it. Wow. Not for a week, not for a month, not for a year. Because again, the brain cannot comprehend that. That's why you see some people when they make a New Year resolution on December 31, by January 15, they've forgotten the resolution and they're back to their old habit because nobody can change something. Oh, I'm going to do this for the whole year. It's just too much. But 24-hour, most people can do it. And then what I tell people is if you make a promise to be happy for 24 hours, that 24-hour promise, attach to it what I would call self-compassion. Okay. Self-compassion simply means that the fact that you promise yourself you're going to be happy for 24 hours doesn't mean you will be happy for the whole 24 hours. Something can happen just 1 hour into it, or 3 hours into it, or 4 hours into it. Don't start to beat on yourself. Don't start to say, damn, everybody can do 24 hours except me. What kind of person am I? What can I do right? So don't beat on yourself at all. You have to have self-compassion. If you only did it for 1 hour, give yourself a pat on the back. Man, guess what? I did it for 1 hour. Yay. Whatever happened, deal with what happened, then set it again. So if you are able to complete 24 hours, then at the end of the 24 hours, then you renew your commitment. You renew your contract for another 24 hours. So it's kind of like a baby step. But what again you're doing is you're rewiring your brain cells to say, hey, I can be happy for 24 hours. And once I do it, and then imagine if you can do 24 hours, like 7 days in a row or 14 days in a row or a month or 2 months. After some time, it becomes second nature, to you. Okay, the third thing, and this is a little bit difficult, okay, and I have to preface that, but this is very powerful. if people can develop it, because then you really have control over your own happiness. Okay. And it took me some time to do this, but once you get it, it is so powerful. I call it the 3-minute rule. Okay. The 3-minute rule is a life throws you a curveball. And let me make this part really clear, because I don't want anybody in your audience hearing this and say, wow, this guy can solve everything in 3 minutes. No, that's not what I'm saying. Okay. Okay. It doesn't have to start at 3 minutes. It could start at 3 hours. It could start at 3 days. It could start at 3 weeks. It could even start at 3 months. But I don't think it should be longer than that, because if you're going through a very tough situation, the longer you take, the more it becomes your new norm, and so you don't want that. Okay. Right. So what I do is you practice it and start reducing the time frame and start reducing the time frame. So over the years, I have managed to reduce mine to 3 minutes. Okay. So the way it works is this: something terrible happened to you. Ordinary, it clear you off your feet. You got the life curveballs on you. You go and you set your alarm for 3 minutes. Okay, that's what I do. I set my alarm for 3 minutes. And in that 3 minutes, I give myself permission to go through all kinds of emotion. So if I want to scream, I'm going to scream. If I want to be sad, I'm going to be sad. If I want to be angry, I'm going to be angry. If I want to cry, I'm going to cry like a baby. And I tell guys, they say, oh, man, don't cry. That's a bunch of BS, okay? You either cry out or you cry inside, but you cry anyway. So for me, I just cry out. Let the tears be soothing, for me. So I give myself permission to go through all of those emotions, because that's human. If you don't go through emotion and you bag it in, one day it's going to explode and you have no control, okay? So I do that. Once my alarm rings at the end of the 3 minutes, I am moving to my default position. And this is why I label my TEDx talk as happiness as a default position, because my default position is happiness. Now, some people say, wait a second, you have not seen a really big problem. How can you solve the problem in 3 minutes? Now, I did not say I solved the problem in 3 minutes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I move from unhappy me to happy me. Because when I am happy, I can deal with the problem better.
Okay. Yes.
So that some people say, oh, take your time. I say, no, you don't have time. Is not your friend when you are going through tough time. You don't have that luxury. So the sooner you can move away from your unhappy self to the happy self, you are more resilient. Okay. You are more creative when you are happy. As a matter of fact, you can attract people who can actually help you, because happiness attracts, and you are more productive during that time. In other words, you can deal with your problem or situation a lot better when you are happy than when you are not happy. And so I give myself that 3-minute permission to go through all the emotion, because that's part of being human. But now I want to get to where I can face my problem and deal with it the best way I can. So that's how the 3-minute rule works. And if a person can get that down, maybe it's not 3 minutes for you in the beginning, like I said, but if you get it down packed, you can truly be happy 24/7, except for 3 minutes.
That's probably, oh my gosh, that 3 right there is like, probably the gem of the podcast right there. We have absolutely enjoyed having you. You've been such an amazing guest, Edwin. I'm ecstatic to have you on the podcast as a guest host. Like you've been absolutely phenomenal. Before we go, though, we always like to sign off with one little thing. Now, we know that you just gave some key pieces of advice, right? So we're not going to ask you to, leave off with a piece of advice or anything like that. We want to make it more personable, right? So I want you to leave off with a moment that makes you the happiest. Like, do you have a happy place? Like, what makes Edwin happy? Like, what does Edwin do when there's no cameras on and, he's not teaching, he's not doing a master class, he's not, hosting an event? What makes Edwin happy? Is there family? Is there, a special car? Is there, a special vacation spot? What's up?
Well, before I say that, let me say thank you very much for having me here. And also thank you for Off Source Inc. being a partner with Happy Neighborhood Project. We truly appreciate that partnership. And so what is it for me is this. And when the pandemic happened, myself and my wife, we love going out and dance. And so all of a sudden everything is shut down. We cannot do that. And I think that contributed to a lot of people unhappiness because they cannot do what they used to do. Well, for us, we're like, hey, okay, so we cannot go to nightclub. Guess what? We already have a studio anyway. So we're gonna just turn the house to a nightclub, okay? And so, so I started to every Friday night we call it the Pata night, and I start to spin music. I start to DJ. So I tell people every other time I'm the chief happiness officer, but when it comes to Friday night, I'm DJ Cho. CHO, I'm DJ Cho. So and I love to dance. So that's my main go-to point for happiness. Something terrible can happen. I'm gonna find my favorite music. I don't play sad music or anything like that. I'm gonna find my favorite music. I'm gonna start dancing. And sometimes people are like, why are you dancing? And, especially my children, and my daughter is now like what, almost 20, 25, 26 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And she'll like, oh, daddy, you're like a little kid in the candy store, and but I enjoy dancing. So that's my go-to.
Wow, we got a little sneak preview there. Okay, so definitely gonna have to have you back. We're gonna have to, I don't want to say pry, but I'm gonna have to maybe crack the door a little bit open more over there on that. I didn't hear anything about the family, so it's good to know that you like to dance and everything.
Absolutely.
So it's been absolutely wonderful having you, Edwin. Again, we thank you so much. So officially, before you sign off, give the shout outs that you want to give, shameless plug everything. Let people know where they can, attend the next Happy Neighborhood Project event. Let the whole world know.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, folks. If you have a business or you are a professional, come and hang with us. Come and hang with like-minded people. Let's put happiness as a foundation. Come to happyneighborhoodproject.com. Again, that's happyneighborhoodproject.com. And while you're at the website, click on the events and you'll see networking. Click on networking and you see all the networking we do all over the world. I think we are now almost like 69 events in about 6 different countries. And also too, while you are at that event, you might also want to click on the masterclass, and attend some of the masterclass. That's all our events are free. Okay, so that's another thing that happened March 20th of 2020. Somebody asked me, okay, today is free because it's International Day of Happiness. Is it always going to be free? And I open my big mouth and I say yes. And so we've kind of kept it free since then, and we plan to keep it free forever. So all our online networking are free, and majority of our master classes are free to support the community. Again, we cannot do this without our partners, like Off Source Inc. So we thank you very much. And so, yeah, and then if you are in Clubhouse, again, it's good news now. Clubhouse is open to both iPhone and Android. So if you're in Clubhouse, we have a club. It's Happy Neighborhood, HMP in parentheses. So Happy Neighborhood, HMP. We have networking there Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, which is 5 p.m. East Coast time. And then every Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific, which is 11 East Coast. I know it's kind of late. We have the Pata night where I become the DJ show, and then every Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, I do the class Happiness as a Skill, but it's really a hallway where we attract people. There was one morning, we had over 200 people, came through there just to learn about how to stay happy. So that's what we do.
That's absolutely amazing. Again, thank you so much for joining. We absolutely appreciate you were here, and we look forward to you being on the next episode, on the next time that you come on, not the next episode, but we look forward to you coming back. We thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Hey, I'm proud.
Hey, Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet, though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.